All right, folks. So we're here. Whenever you guys are ready.
Are we on? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, guys.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. So you met early morning hours with President Donald Trump during his brief stop to Guam on Anderson Air Force Base. Tell us about that.
Yes, it was exciting, and it was important for me to meet with the president, especially in light it's been nearly a year that he gave that phone call, giving assurances that he was behind Guam 1,000% in terms of our security. And I did make mention to the president upon greeting him that it was nearly miraculous what has occurred within a period of 10 months, where we have one situation where Kim Jong-un is threatening nuclear annihilation of Guam and a missile attack, and then within 10 months an agreement is signed between the president and Chairman Kim, moving in a direction of denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and ultimately peace. So it has been an amazing 10 months, and I did talk to the president that I was watching on TV, and again it was even the interpreter of the North Korean chairman who made mention it's almost like a science fiction fantasy because of how events have unfolded. So I'm happy that the president saw fit to come to Guam to want to advise me of his thoughts on this, but also to hear from, and most importantly, not only just from me, but he wanted to get the sentiment of what the people of Guam were feeling as a result of what has happened in the past couple of days.
And what did you tell him?
I told him, I said, Mr. President, again, going back to what happened 10 months ago and now, I think there's 165,000 people that have just breathed a deep sigh of relief. Mm-hmm. And I thanked him for that because, President Trump in a year in office, a little bit more than a year, has accomplished what, it's been since 1950, where we've had the Korean War, and we basically had an armistice, but no peace. Mm-hmm. And so, he is, through a very, very tough policy, whether you call it tough, ultimately to get love or peace through strength, his policy appears to be working. As far as I'm concerned, over the past 10, 15 years, what President Obama called strategic patience was more in line of something called appeasement, which Neville Chamberlain in Great Britain and Europe were guilty of in the 30s. And it didn't work. And I do recall, if you all remember, in 2013 in the Obama administration, that's when the heat started coming up. That's when President Obama brought the THAAD missile system into place. But things got worse. There were more explosions and testing, stronger yields, more missile tests with higher altitudes, which means farther distances. So Chairman Kim took us to the brink. But with President Trump signaling the end of strategic patience, end to appeasement, and his policy of extremely hard sanctions and threats of preemptive attack, things have turned to the point where now we're looking at peace.
Yeah.
So I'm fully supportive of President Trump's actions. People called him a warmonger, but obviously he's accomplished what President Obama couldn't do in his 8 years, and previous presidents as well.
While we have both of these two world leaders signing that agreement for peace, no doubt it's going to take some time before we actually see some of this go into play.
Yes. One of the things he did bring up, and again, it's counter to some of the accusations made by some of his adversaries and critics of being a warmonger, and he brought that up, was the issue on war games and how provocative they were, and also about the B-1 bombers. And it is his belief that as we take this step towards denuclearization, why aggravate the situation? So, with President Trump, he may have played a tough hand when it came to bringing Chairman Kim to the negotiating table to sign this agreement. But in the end also, he's also showing the other side of things, that if there is to be denuclearization, there has to be also some security guarantees given to the North Korean leadership. And I would assume that now, as they're moving in that direction, part of that is to show good faith by cessation of these B-1 bomber flights from Guam to Korea, and also when it comes to war games. So, you know, he even asked me what my thoughts were, and I said, well, Mr. President, the reason why Kim Jong-un put Guam in the bullseye was because of the B-1s that were making those trips, circling the Korean Peninsula and coming back. Mm-hmm. So, you know, obviously, you know, that will lessen the how would you say, the threat that North Korea sees in a place such as Guam.
Okay. And also the president saying that it's very expensive when it comes to holding these exercises. That's why he wants to put an end to these war games. But Congresswoman Madeline Berdalio had mentioned that she's concerned of just the military presence and the lack thereof as a result of ending these war games. Your thoughts?
Well, with if Congresswoman Berdalio is critiquing this issue, then I would think that she should critique President Obama, who gave $1.8 billion in cash up front to Iran, and then freed up $100 billion in assets to Iran when the ink was signed in his agreement, which led to funding of Hamas and Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations that look towards either killing Israelis or killing Americans. So I would hope the Congresswoman would be balanced in her critique, because she had no problem with the Iran treaty. And I thought, and I agree with President Trump, that was sure putting a lot on the table for Iran before the ink even dried in an agreement. So when it comes to President Trump holding off a few B-1 bomber cruises and holding off on some of these war games, number one, yeah, it does save money, but also number two, again, it takes the pressure down. But so one hand, someone is saving money, putting the pressure down. The forces are still there in Korea. In the other hand, in President Obama's case, billions of dollars was transferred to a nation that is still basically one of the greater threats in terms of terrorism worldwide. Right. So that's my comments on Congresswoman Berdalio's thoughts.
Okay. And of course, a lot of historic events coming out of the Singapore summit, including now putting Guam as part of putting in the history books with his visit here.
Yes.
And during your final year in office.
I did talk to him. It was, it was a little bit bittersweet for me because, again, dealing with the Obama administration, there's been a lot of issues that I've had that were recurring. A lot of it was, I see, restrictions in our ability to either with foreign workers, some of the inequities in Medicaid, Medicare, some of the heavy burdens put on our agencies here in terms of compliance and Clean Water, Clean Air Act. And I'm seeing now a breath of fresh air in this short period in the Trump administration. The problem is, by the way, I mean, the problem is it's not a problem. It'll be good for the next governor because I see an administration now in Washington that is more not focused on the Beltway, but is focused on states and territories such as Guam and what are the best interests of those territories and states. So I wish I had more time to work with his administration, but again, the good news is in how the president has, again, focused on territories such as Guam that can't even vote for a president, but what is to their best interest. I mean, really, you think about it. Here's a president that knows that we can't even vote for him, and his first question to me is, what do the people of Guam think? I think that's the kind of president folks in the territories need.
Did he say whether or not he'll be coming back or any plans to make a trip back this way?
We just talked about maybe me going to Washington before I leave office because there's still a lot of unfinished business. So it was not more him coming back. It was more me looking towards scheduling a trip to Washington, D.C. to discuss other issues that are important to the territory.
Okay, with news out of the summit, you're meeting with him early overnight. Your message to the people of Guam who, after had to experience and endure that direct threat 10 months ago.
Well, again, I'm feeling very good about this summit meeting, and for all of you, the people of Guam, and I made mention that to the president. You know, we are one territory that has felt war because we have been invaded. There are people still alive here today that were under enemy occupation. You have now an administration where they believe that in worst case situations, when there are a threat to our island and our people, that the United States government and our president is there to back them up. And at the same time, you have a president now that is in a mode towards finding peace, and with that peace could lead for, again, brighter and better time for the people of Guam and the Western Pacific.
Did you happen to also talk about other Guam issues unrelated to the summit?
It was more focused on what had happened in regards to the summit, and that was really the main focus of the meeting.
Did he give any details about what he discussed with the
Well,
summit?
again, what I brought up earlier, his focus was, hey, it's what the people think about it. You know, he's focused on peace, but it also means we have to tamp down some areas that he believes there's provocations. So, you know, he did focus on, to me, his desire to calm down on terms of war games, at least in the Korean Peninsula, and also in regards to the flights of B-1 bombers from Guam to Korea.
All right.
It was a brief meeting, wasn't it?
About 15 minutes,
About
15, 20 minutes. I did bring up to him, you know, I did give him, because of how the timing was, originally we were going to go there, and then the White House called us and said, you know, the president had slept in, 24, 25 hours, so he was probably going to be sleeping even when they landed. So they said, you know, maybe we'd be wise, we don't want to have the governor waiting. So I went home to sleep, and then we got a phone call, and the White House is scrambling. They're trying to reach me because they're saying the president, you know, is waiting for us. So I had to make a quick 10 minutes to get from Mighty to Anderson Air Force Base in the middle of the night. That's, you know, so I got up there, and I had a gift I was supposed to give, a really nice gift, but, you know, because we didn't think we were going to go there, one of my aides had the gift, I only had a scapular, and it was a very special scapular, and I told you know what I did? I told the president, the irony of all this, as I was watching the president sign the agreement with Kim Jong-un, not 15 minutes later, the pilgrimage statue of Our Lady of Fatima visited my house in Mighty. Mm-hmm. And it was something happening real quick because Father Mike Chrysostomo said, hey, can he stop by, can we allow the statue to stop by our house? I said, sure. So 15 minutes after I see the president sign the agreement, the statue comes. We have a bunch of nuns and folks in the cloth, and they all passed out these blessed scapulars. Mm-hmm. So I had it in my pocket, and I told him, you know, Mr. President, it's interesting too that we had this for Catholics. This is a symbol of a devotion for world peace, and not 15 minutes after you signed that, it came to my to my house, and I told him the irony of, because last year, when this whole crazy thing about war and nuclear annihilation was occurring, the statue had come also from South Korea, if you guys in the media can recall. And I saw, I told him, it looks like coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidences. And then I asked him, since I know that his wife is a Catholic, I said, hey, the scapular has been blessed, it's consecrated and a devotion to peace. I said, can you please give this to your wife, and she'll understand what Our Lady of Fatima is all about. Mm-hmm. So that was just something interesting. And he said, okay.
All right, folks, we have time for one more question.
Final words to the Trump administration and to President Trump now that he's since left Guam.
Well, again, I congratulate President Trump and all his staff. Again, Secretary of State Pompeo and all those that negotiated with the Kim regime. But now, again, there's still a lot of work at hand. So I'm giving them all my support and our prayers that as they move along in these very critical negotiations, that it will lead to a lessening of tensions in the Western Pacific region, ultimately leading to a denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and finally an end to a war that has taken almost 3/4 of a century. So again, congratulations to President Trump and his administration, and we wish you Godspeed and success as we move towards a pathway towards peace in this region.
Thanks everyone for.
All right, take care, everybody. So I guess the congresswoman thinks the Iran deal is better than the.
Then a peace treaty.
Well, Iran has a lot of money now.
All right, thank you guys.
Take care.
Why?
No, it's falling apart. How do you fix like when leather comes out?
Oh man, there's nothing. You just gotta replace it.